Hey, welcome in everyone. Dave Solentano here with your Wednesday night Guitar Trick sponsored guitar lessons. Yay. All right. Let's thank you for Guitar Tricks for putting this on and making it happen every Wednesday with me, and sometimes we have other instructors off the site too doing this as well. But lately it's been me. So you guys are stuck with me. All right. So we got some folks already here. Lisa's here. Zach Lee from Venice, California, kind of near my old stomping grounds, and Lisa up in Michigan. Hello, Lisa. Peter, Danny, Richard. All right. Cool. Good deal. All right. Well, if you've been paying attention, everybody, last week, last several weeks, we've been working on the modes. Last week, we were doing Lydian, and what I'm doing is dedicating 2 weeks to each mode. And there's 7 modes, so 2 times 7 is 14. So this is a 14-week-long series. I've already done about half of them. I did Ionian, 2 weeks on Ionian, 2 weeks on Dorian, 2 weeks on Phrygian. And then tonight, we're going to conclude with the second week of the Lydian. So we got 4 modes covered, and then we got 3 more to do in the next few weeks. Actually, the next 6 weeks. So I believe one of those Wednesdays, I'll remind you of the week before, but I've got tickets for Guns N' Roses with my wife and here in town in the Phoenix area. So we're going to be off seeing that concert. So I will miss everyone, but no fear. We're not going to skip the class. We're just going to bounce it a week later. So we're still going to get all 2 weeks for every single mode covered. Cool. And Southern Comfort. All right, cool. Appreciate it, Southern Comfort. Yeah. It's my trusty Les Paul, one of my favorite guitars. I've got many, but this is one of my favorite ones to play. I also love that 335 plays really good too. I haven't busted that one out with my band yet, or the group that I joined. It's not my band, but the group I joined. We're called West of the Blues out here in the Sun City West area of Phoenix, kind of the west side. But we're playing a lot of gigs. Got a lot of gigs coming up. But I might bring that guitar to one of the shows, a couple of the shows. But usually I play the Les Paul. It's a real easy guitar to play, and I can squeeze a lot of sounds out of it. So let's get on with our show here, everyone. Lydian, I'll start with a little quick jam, and then we'll get on to a quick little review of the scale patterns we did. And by the way, if you weren't here last week, go ahead, open up the text box that's underneath the video, your YouTube video, and you're going to see there's a link for printing the curriculum for today. There's 2 sheets. The tablature notation one we're going to be going over today. Last week, we did the one with the neck diagrams. I've got a caged pattern version of the Lydian. We're doing F Lydian. And then I've got a 3-note per string version of F Lydian. And then I've got the chord, the F major chord that exists in those patterns, so you can see where the chord tones are. Because when we're playing solos, everybody, it's good to know your scale and know what key you're in, but it's also important to follow the chords. So if you're just mindlessly playing the scale, even though you're hitting all the notes that are in key, it might not necessarily sound the best because you're probably not following the chords. So it's a really good idea to follow the chords when you solo too. It requires a little more work, everybody, but that's what's going to make you sound. David Gilmour does that great, Comfortably Numb solo, and the song Mother from Pink Floyd, both I believe are on the Wall album. Those solos in Mother and Comfortably Numb, the first solo in Comfortably Numb, he follows the chord change very nicely. And that's why those solos sound so good, because they follow the chords. Slash does that really good in the slower solos in November Rain, kind of earlier in the song, before he starts shredding. He follows the chord change that Axl Rose is playing on piano and Izzy's playing on rhythm guitar. He follows the chords. Not only does he know what key it's in, but he follows the chords. Also, Sweet Child of Mine has several solos in it. The first 2 little solos, Slash follows the chords beautifully. He doesn't overboard play, but he follows the chords with playing the notes of the scale and landing on specific chord tones. So last week we talked about the patterns, the Lydian shapes, And then I gave everyone some chord progressions and also gave you a few references of songs that use Lydian. I'll go over those in a minute. But the one common chord progression that I showed everyone is in the text box right up here on the tab sheet or on the neck diagram sheet. It says F Lydian can be played over this chord change, among others too. So the trick with knowing it's Lydian is when you have two major chords that are a whole step apart going back and forth. And the lower of the two chords is the root or the tonic. So if I was going back and forth between G and then up to F, that would be an F Lydian rhythm. Now, what's written in the chart, everybody, is F, and then you go to a G over F. How the heck do you play G/F? Well, what that means is you're playing a G chord or a G triad with an F note in the bass, because there is no F note in a G, just a regular G major chord. Okay? But if you put an F in there in the bass, you could call it, well, for the folks out there that understand about theory, you could call that a G. It's one of the inversions of a G7 chord. But let's not go down that road. Just keep it simple. It's a G major triad on strings 4, 3, 2. And then keeping the bass note on the first fret of the sixth string. Now, it's a little hard to play it if you do all with a pick, because you got that fifth string that we don't want to play. So what I do is a hybrid pick. I pick the sixth string with my pick, and then my 3 fingers on strings 4, 3, and 2. So I go between the F bar chord. Then I just lift off my 3 fingers and then get the bar finger just to hold the 6th string first fret. And I pluck the same 3 strings with my 3 plucking fingers. Okay, that's that chord change. Or you could do it like this. You could play an F major with the A form bar chord shape up the 8th fret. And if you got a good strong pinky, you can bar the 12th fret on strings 4, 3, and 2. And that's your G major triad, but you keep the first finger on the 8th fret 5th string. That's your F note. See, that has a real Lydian sound. And if you remember from last week, everybody, what makes it Lydian? Well, Lydian is just the major scale, the do, re, mi. But it says up here in the text box, everyone, okay, this is important if you want to become a well-rounded soloist and understand what you're doing instead of just learning some licks and having no idea what you're playing. You want to understand numerically all the notes in the major scale are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And when we start doing altered scales, some of the modes, what they're doing is changing some of those 7 notes. They'll flat a few of them. They might sharp one of them or 2 of them. Who knows? Yeah, that's what the formula is for. So you look at the Lydian, and numerically it goes 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so when you play a major scale, you take the 4th note and raise it a fret. So F major sounds like do, re, mi, right? Okay, now if I sharp the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or do, I'm going to sharp that fa. It sounds, everyone's used to hearing the major scale. So that's why, to me, the Lydian sticks out like a sore thumb because of that one note that's different. That's the only note that's different. Okay? And it gives it a nice characteristic. It sounds a little bit off, but it still works. Okay? So what I did is I just created a little backing track playing over 2 chords back and forth. And what I wanted to do was keep the low E. I wanted to do something kind of simple. So I took an E major chord, and then I pound on the 6th string. And then for the second one, I just move it 2 frets higher, and then and it's okay if you hit the open high E and B in there. It still sounds Lydian. because what's happening is, I know I just talked to you about F, Lydian, but for this chord progression and what I'm going to play for, I made a little backing track last week. I just created a drum loop and then played these two chords over it for about a minute and a half. Okay, just so I have something to play over. And it's playing over backing tracks is cool, and you want to have something that has the drummer so you can really feel that beat, because we really need to play in time with the track, in time with the drums. And again, too, it's not just playing the notes of the scale, but trying to make them fit into the rhythm or the groove of the song. Okay, so, and then feel free, folks. I know there's a lot of people watching here tonight. Feel free to ask some questions, or if you just want to kick back and listen, that's fine too. I see a Bangs here, some of the usual suspects. James, all right, cool. King 50, checking in from Northern Nevada. Right on. Hank, hello, hello. And Zane, all right, cool. And Jim, all right, cool. So anyway, I'm just going to keep talking and babbling on, but you go ahead and throw some questions up if you have any. Okay. So I'm going to change everything from F to E major just to keep it simple, okay? Because this is, for some folks, maybe just starting out with the modes, perhaps playing the F and then taking everything off except your first finger and doing that for F Lydian might be a little more challenging than just playing an E chord and then move it up 2 frets. Have you ever heard Xanadu from Rush? That's what Alex Lifeson does. He goes, he likes to use those open strings. They sound really kind of nice in there, kind of magical almost. And it makes the chords sound more complicated than they are. All right? That's another neat thing about some of these chords I'm going to show you. They might sound harder than they actually are to play. Okay, hear that? So that's what I'm going to play over, and I'm just going to try to create some ideas, just improvise a little bit over it, but I'm going to also try to follow the chords. And this would be our F sharp major. It's like doing an F sharp bar chord on the 2nd fret, but no bar finger, because I want to keep the E string as the root tonality. Another thing too, folks, with these modes, and I'm going to keep stressing this, the modes aren't really meant to play over some long, exaggerated chord progression with a million chords. Usually you hear the modes in the context of a simple 2-chord vamp back and forth, maybe 3 chords. Sometimes it could just be even 1 chord, people, with a good groove on the drums. Maybe the bass is doing some funky little riff off of that 1 chord, and then the keyboard or the guitar is just holding down the chord. Maybe with a funky strum. Okay, could be something like that. If you're doing something with a minor mode, you could do an E minor 7. Here we're doing E major, though. We want that sound. Now, the sharp 4 in E Lydian is your B flat or your A sharp. And what makes that's the standout note, folks. So what I want to do in my chord progression is have at least one of the chords in the progression have that sharp 4 in it. That's the A sharp note. Well, the E chord doesn't have an A sharp in it. But if I move it up 2 frets to F sharp, the index finger, 3rd string, 3rd fret, there's your A sharp. Okay, so this has a definite Lydian sound. Okay, think this. Dig up Joe Satriani's Flying in a Blue Dream. Okay, he's doing the same idea. He's taking a C major chord and just moving it up 2 frets to make it D major, but he's got some of those open strings that give it a nice little magical type of sound. Okay. Here comes my girl from Tom Petty. And then what the guitarist does in the Tom Petty tune, he actually moves, instead of going back to the lower A, he does the next inversion of A up here. So he's got... Another one, Dreams from Fleetwood Mac, I think is just F to G major. It's actually F major 7. So the first string is open, but the second string's held at the first fret. Move it up 2 frets, and then you got a G major with the open high E. It makes it like a G major 6. Okay. Now, granted, in that song, it's not really a shreddy solo type of song, but it is, nevertheless, that part of the song is F Lydian. Okay. So what I'm going to do, folks, is play over my little backing tracks, just going from E to F sharp, and then I'm going to play the pattern right here. These patterns that you've got in your sheet for the Lydian, they're F Lydian. But what I'm going to do is move everything back 1 fret. So it's the exact same geometry, same shape, but a fret lower. The green dot, or actually, I'm sorry, not the green on mine, but they're red on everybody else's. Your red dots are the root notes. You want to make sure if you're going to do E Lydian, from your E chord up 2 frets to F major with an E in the bass, you want to make sure to play E Lydian. So I'm going to start that. The 11th fret is not the root, but the 12th fret is. So I'm going to go 11, 12, 14, 11, 13, 14. Same on the 4th string. Then the 3rd string is just 11, 13. Then 11, 12, 14. And then 11, 12, 14 again in high E. Okay, I'm also going to explore that 3 note per string one, starting on the 12th fret. Okay, and I'm going to actually expand to other areas on the fretboard too, because I see the whole fretboard and all the Lydian patterns on it. But these 2 are just to get you started. This isn't the be all end all for the modes, folks. You should really, once you get comfortable playing in just one little pattern, you should really try to explore the whole fretboard. Steve Vai does some fun things too, where he will try to limit himself to just playing on 1 string or 2 strings. And we're going to do some of that today. But to think about your modes on 1 string really makes you think about the geometry of the mode, the formula of the mode, the distance between each of the notes, okay? And that's good to do. So you're not just playing from memory a pattern, but you're actually thinking, contemplating a little bit more about what you're playing and trying to make it sound decent. Hey, David just popped in. Hey, no worries, David. Cool. No problem. You can watch the early part of it, Dave, on a rerun. But I'm just getting ready to just jam over this track. So what I'm going to do is just play in E Lydian for a sec here. Not too long, everyone. And I'm going to try to follow the chords with chord tones, and I'll explain some of what I'm doing. So I'm going to start out by playing the first pattern up here. I'm going to be exploring that and then dipping into some of the areas a little below and above it too. Okay, so here's my backing track. Okay, I got that kind of cranked. Hopefully you can hear that. Just the F sharp. A little too far. Okay, you get the idea. So it's only there, we'll stop that. Okay. Just practicing over it and just improvising things. You can definitely expand and go on beyond that. Just try doing it for yourself. If you can't find any Lydian backing tracks, I didn't find any on Guitar Tricks. So unfortunately, I don't have any of those to share with you, but you can just make, I just record this on my phone, just with my voice memo app. I just create a drum loop and play over it for a few minutes. Just the rhythm guitar, 2 chords back and forth. Okay. Now, David's asking a question here. Let me read this. When you play the entire fretboard, does your ear lead you to correct notes once you played the basic pattern a couple of times, or do you still think about the patterns and the note spacing? Actually, Dave, both, all of that. Yeah, absolutely. Because think about this, Dave, and everyone else too. All these modes are derived from the major scale. And a good way I like to explain it is they're an inversion of the major scale. Just like when we learn triads, some of us are working on triads, right? There's inversions of the triads. The triads, the root inversion or root position would be for a C major when you put the 3 notes of C major chord in sequential order starting from the root C. So you would go C, E, G. And then the first inversion is where you take the C note, put it up top, and then the third becomes the bass, E, G, C. The second inversion is where you take the low note, the third or the E, put that up top, and the fifth becomes the bass. So we got G, C, E. Okay. The scales, the modes are very similar to that concept. Okay. Now, the triads are using only 3 notes, whereas the modes and the major scale has 7 notes. So we could potentially have 7 different inversions. Okay. So if I start the C major scale on the first note and play till its octave, it sounds like C major, the Ionian mode. If I play the exact same notes, and keep in mind, everyone, C major has only natural letters, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. George, let him cook. All right. So you got C to C. That's your root position for the Ionian mode or the major scale. Ionian and the major scale are the same thing. If we start on the second note in the C major scale, which is D, and play the exact same notes, but make D the root, okay, it doesn't sound major anymore, even though we're playing the same notes, because I've shifted the focus, the root, to the second note of the scale. That's the Dorian mode. Okay, that sounds a little more minor because the distance between the root note of the D Dorian and the third degree is a minor third. Okay, the third note in the C major scale is E. So if I start on the E note and play the same notes, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, it sounds, that's the Phrygian mode. It sounds minor also, but it sounds kind of a little bit darker than the Dorian because you've got right above the root note and right above the 5th degree, you've got a half step higher. Those little half step intervals from a chord tone to the higher, 1 fret higher, they create that little mystique, that mysticism type of sound. Okay. And if you start from the 4th note of the scale, C, D, E, F, and make F the root note, play the same notes, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. That's the Lydian. That's the one we're working on today, everybody. And you can really hear it when you play the 3 notes of the chord, F, A, C, back to the sharp 4. Okay? And if we got some folks that are on top of what we're doing here, you'll probably realize, hey, wait, the sharp 4 is the same as the blues note. You know, if we're familiar with playing your blues scale with a flat 5, it's like a minor pentatonic with a flat 5 added. Okay, you hear that in a lot of rock songs. Deep Purple uses that. Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin uses that quite a bit in some of his riffs. But when we're in a minor scale, we would typically call that note the flat 5. Okay, but when we're in a major, the Lydian mode, we've already have a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we don't want to have a 5 and a flat 5, because we also would not have a 4. We wouldn't have the sharp 4. So we want to have a different number representing each note of the scale. Okay, that's why we call it a sharp 4. We got 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, because the 4 would be that. 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to the root with number 8 or number 1. Okay? Russ is saying, working on just that with the triad inversions. Good to hear your quick explanation. Oh, cool. Cool, Russ. Yeah, little review. So that's kind of the deep contemplation of the modes, just kind of thinking about them and trying to understand them above just playing the dots on the page. All right, that's a start, but we want to try to go a little further. And I know some of us, like David Carlton, is asking some really good questions, and some of the other students too are aware of what I'm talking about. We just got to do it more so you get comfortable with it. But it's okay if you don't get all of it right away. I mean, when I was younger, I was just all about the patterns. And then eventually I slowly got to know my notes on the fretboard. Now I feel pretty comfortable playing like these modes, since they're all just the major scale anyway. And I know my whole fretboard and pretty much every key, every major scale. The modes is just thinking about, well, what key are they derived? Is that mode derived from? And then I realize what key, that major key that is. But the only thing I have to change is the root note, right? So let me ask you this, everybody. If we're doing F Lydian, what major scale? Lydian's the 4th mode. That means it's based on the 4th note in what scale? Okay. C, exactly. All right, how about this one, folks? It's not on the page, but that rhythm I was playing over. Here, let me fire this up again. Okay. Remember, this track I just made up and I played is going from E up to F sharp. It's E Lydian. So what major scale has E as the 4th note? And then Truchas, Trish. Wait, there's a lot of answers coming up. What major scale has E as the 4th note? So you have to go up if you're, hang on. I see all kinds of answers coming up here. Some of them are right, some of them aren't. All right, so E is number 4. So what would be number 3? Okay, you got to count backwards. So E, and then the major scale from 4 to 3 is a half step. It would be D sharp. Then the 2 would be a whole step lower. That's C sharp. And then the 1 is the B. So it is B major. David, yep, Richard, and Zach got it. And my knees hurt. And Russ, maybe what you did is you counted up from E. You went E, F, G, A, because that is 4 up. But the modes are derived from the major scale in a lower position, and we go up from that. Okay. Plus, it helps to get used to counting on your fingers, or just kind of thinking about it. Use your guitar if you need to, or piano if you understand. I don't play piano, but I totally know what the notes are and the difference between the black and white keys. The blacks are the sharps and flats. The whites are the naturals. So whatever way to helps you to figure out how to play this, how to get to know your notes. Right on, Russ. Yep, cool deal. So my rhythm is going E to F sharp. I'm just thinking B major. I'm in the key of B major, but I don't want to necessarily make B's the roots. I want to make E the root. Okay, that is the significant difference. So, and we almost need to have a different vocabulary of licks. Okay, because when I'm in B major, I can go. Okay, but that sounds like country music, kind of major sounding. I don't want that. I want to make the E the root, even though I'm playing the same notes, and it's going to not sound like that. It's going to have a different vocabulary, different feel over it. Let me just read these questions real quick, and I'll jam over that for a sec. My niece said, I didn't count. I went from the 7th fret to the 5th on the 4th string, 7th fret. Wrong direction. Oh, well, cool. At least you're trying, my niece heard. That's all I ask, folks. Just try to figure this stuff out. Try to keep up. And that's how you learn, too. It's okay to make mistakes. Heck, I make a lot of them. I've made a lot, and I still make some. That's how we learn. Okay? And then he says, my niece heard, just mentally looking at the fretboard without guitar near me. Yep, that's another thing, too, my niece heard, and everyone else. Whenever I talk theory with other musicians, especially musicians that don't play guitar, like one of the guys in our band is a saxophone player. And when we're talking about notes, I have no clue how to play a sax. Uh-oh, got a visit from Maverick. Crazy dog. All right. But when he's talking notes on his saxophone, I have no clue on how to play a saxophone. But I visualize what he's saying on this. And I can only do that because I know I got it all memorized. And that just comes, people, from working with your guitar. Try to figure out what you're playing. Don't just physically put your fingers there and play it, but try to understand what you're doing a little bit. I challenge you. I mean, that will make you a better player by gripping into the theory part just a little bit, folks, and getting to know your fretboard. All right, so let me jam over this one more sec, and then we'll get on to the second page, everybody, which has a little bit more of a linear way. In fact, what I'm going to do now over this track, I'm going to try to play on just a couple strings moving up and down the fretboard, and just try to keep it in key and make it sound halfway decent. But like on that beginning part that I played, listen how this sounds like it follows the chords. See how it follows? Okay, I knew it was just going to end right there. But you just kind of play over it. Some of it doesn't sound too good. Some of it might sound kind of cool. When you're improvising, don't worry about making sure every single thing sounds great. Just have fun and try to remember what did sound good. And also try to remember what didn't sound good and don't do that again. All right? It's okay to make mistakes when you're improvising, but try to learn from them. Hey, we got a visitor from Maverick. All right, so enough with the backing tracks for right now, people. I'm going to go ahead. Let's move over to the tablature sheet that we did not go over last week. Now we're going to spend the rest of tonight looking at playing the Lydian on one string, and I'm going to use the open B string as a drone to go against this. So I'm going to clean up my sound just a little bit. So right now I've got a Blues Junior setting on that Axe Effects with a tube screamer. I'm going to turn the tube screamer off so it won't be quite as overdriven. Okay. And then let me just read the comments too. There's a few of them that just came in. Okay, David's saying, crazy question. I'm wondering if you overlay the major modes, how many notes are not used? Which ones are really sour? So Dave, what you're referring to then is the Ionian is one of the major modes. That's number one. Lydian is another major mode. That's the fourth mode. And then David, what's the next mode? There's three major sounding modes. In other words, they all have a major third. Ionian is one of them. My knees hurt. And then Lydian, the one we're doing today, that's another major mode because from the F up to the third note is a major third. It also goes with the fourth chord in the diatonic major scale. The fourth chord's always major. It would be Mixolydian is the fifth mode. Yep, that's the third of the three major modes: Ionian, Lydian, Mixolydian. So if I read your question right, David, what you're asking or saying is if we overlaid the three modes on top of each other, what would be the difference? Well, you wouldn't have a flat 2, a flat 6, or what else? Or a flat third. Yeah, a 2, 3, and 6 would not be in any of those. So those are the ones you would want to miss. But typically when you hear modal ideas, they're not really mixing all those modes over each other. But that's an interesting thing to observe, and just it doesn't hurt to try, David. But I typically don't hear guitar players playing in multiple modes at the same time. It's usually one. Another good example, folks, is that song, the theme from The Simpsons. Okay, that's totally Lydian. He goes from the root to the sharp 4 to the 5, and then the next lick, that's the root, major third, sharp 4. That's the 6, back to the 5th, third, root, the 6 again, the major, that's the sharp 4 again. So the Simpsons theme is kind of a cool little fun, playful idea to do with Lydian too. And let's jump over to this single string stuff, people. Let me read the comments real briefly here. All right, my knee hurts. I love theory, but I get lost in it eventually. I feel like swimming in the ocean. Go out until you've over your head, swim back to the shore and catch your breath, then swim out again. There you go, my knees hurt. Yeah, just absorb what you can. I don't know everything, people. I absolutely don't. And that's why I like to play with other musicians that are really good, better than me, because that's when I learn. If I'm hanging around musicians that are not as good, that's fine too. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm maybe learning different things. But I really like hanging around good musicians because I learn from them. Even if it's not a guitar player, like our saxophone player in the band is a great player. And I learn a lot about music from his perspective. And that's good for us, that we can take it to the guitar afterwards. But just whatever is over your head, my knees hurt, just don't worry about it. Just absorb what you can. I'm here to help you. If you want to do a one-on-one lesson with me, I can explain things a little more in detail. And I've got a ton of curriculum that I share with my students. Plus, we use guitar tricks. They've got a ton of curriculum I can point my students at and give them homework off the guitar trick site. I always do that too. Trish Truchas is saying, so depending on where the song goes with different chords, do you also use different modes within one arrangement? If the tonal center changes, yes. I mean, that could happen, definitely, but usually not at the same time, like concurrently, like David was saying, overlaying the modes over each other. I don't hear that. But to do, part of the song might be Lydian, and then maybe another section of the song might be Mixolydian or some other mode. That is very possible. I couldn't tell you an example off the top of my head, but if we searched, I'm sure we could find something. But check out Steve Vai, Joe Satriani do a lot of that, exploring those modes, and a lot of other guitar players too. The pop songs that I mentioned, the Tom Petty one, Here Comes My Girl, and Dreams from Fleetwood Mac, those are great songs too, but they're not really, the guitar players aren't necessarily as deep into the mode as what we're talking about here, but it's still Lydian nevertheless. Cool. Yep, my knees hurt. Learning patience, playing with musicians. Yep. If the chords are C major to F major, would you play Ionian then Lydian? Well, if you're doing something like this, my knees hurt. You could think of it as switching to F Lydian, because F Lydian's still in the key of C major. But more importantly than that, my knees hurt. It's both chords are in C major. Just stay in C major, but you want to follow the chords. So over the C chord, then the F chord, back to the C. Right. Anyway, I would try to follow the chords and just practice some ideas over, record yourself playing those two chords, and then just try to jam over it and see what you come up with. But we don't really, if that's the case though, my knees hurt, just try to follow the chords. It's real important whether you're doing blues, heavy metal, country, rock, classic rock, even from learning classical music, classical music follows all kinds of more complicated chord changes. All right. So just keep learning, keep going, and keep exploring. What I like about music is that I'm never going to know everything, and there's always more to learn. And when I kind of get bored, I've gotten bored in different styles when I was younger. Like I started out liking rock a lot, still love it. But after a while, I kind of got bored of playing that. And that's when I got into playing a little bit of classical, but I would work it out on electric guitar. And then that was cool. And then after a while, I kind of got back into the rock stuff. And then I got into blues for a while. And then just from going deep into a certain area for a while, it gave me a bunch of new tools in my tool belt that I could bring back to the rock stuff. And it also, playing blues, for instance, helped me to learn to follow the chords a lot better, rather than just mindlessly playing A minor pentatonic over the blues in A. I'm trying to follow the chords. We're going to do some blues classes on these Wednesday night sessions in the upcoming future. I've done that before, and I'm going to reintroduce some stuff again. But we'll talk about following the chords. It's real important to do that. Okay. So Richard's saying, if you're in the key of C playing over C7, would you play Mixolydian scale? Richard, you hit the nail on the head. See, you're starting to get it. There's anytime we see a seventh chord, a dominant seven, not a minor seven, not a major seven, not a minor seven flat five, but just a dominant 7, which typically dominant 7th chords usually don't write dominant or DOM. They usually just write the number 7 after the chord name. So what Richard's saying there in his comment is that when he's playing C, the C7, as soon as you either see a dominant 7th chord, a 7th chord in a chart, it's always the 5 chord. There's no other chord when you harmonize the 7 chords in the major scale. There's only one dominant 7th chord. It's always the 5 chord. There's 2 major 7 chords. The 1 is major 7. The 4 is major 7. The 2, 3, and 6 chords are always minor 7s. The 7th chord, the last one, that's minor 7 flat 5, or in other words, it's half diminished. But the 5 chord is the unique chord. There's only one, and it's very popular, that dominant 7 that you're talking about, Richard. So over that dominant 7, you would need to play C Mixolydian, which we're going to get into next week with our first week of 2 weeks for Mixolydian. So over that, see, it has a unique sound to it. Sometimes what I'll do, and I hear a lot of guitarists do this when they're playing a Mixolydian, they'll actually squeeze in the minor third, which is incorrect. It doesn't sound right. Hear that note? That E flat. But what they always do is either bend the E flat, the minor third, up a half step to the major third, or they just hammer it on. You hear Eric Clapton do that in Crossroads, you know? You know, at the end of that whole intro, he goes, okay, he does, it's A minor pentatonic, but he hammers on to that major third. Something like that. Kind of butchering it a little bit, but you get the idea. So they'll play minor pentatonic, but then they'll go into that major third. That kind of gives you a little bit of the Mixolydian sound too, Richard. There's a lot of ways to kind of fudge it. And really, the jazz guitar player Pat Metheny, I read once, said any note works as long as you know how to resolve it correctly. So the difference between a beginner playing the wrong notes and someone very experienced playing the wrong notes is that the beginner playing the wrong note has no idea, and they just keep on playing wrong notes without any clue how to get out of them. But the experienced musicians can play a wrong note. See that note? Hear how bad that E flat sounds? But if I reconcile it, get to the chord tone, the major third. You can add in even chromatic notes. So you can do any other note as long as you know you're playing wrong notes and you resolve them to right notes. The best right notes, people, are the chord tones. So start on the 5th of the chord, bad note. It's not in the chord either, but it's in the scale. And then I end on the major third, which is the major third of the C. So any note can work as long as you know how to resolve it. Takes a little bit of practice to get to that point, though. Hey, Second Chance Band's here. Hello. Appreciate you stopping by for a few minutes. Second Chance. All right. All right. My niece hurts, says he has to go to work. All right. Cool. Definitely. And Drop by next week, my knees hurt, and we'll be off to the Mixolydian mode. Okay, let's let's get under this single string version, people. Now, this is kind of neat too, to hear your modes against an open string like a drone, because a lot of times when you hear like sitar music, they'll have open strings ringing while they play notes and melodies on other strings. And it kind of has this sound. That's the top example on that tablature notation page. Okay. This is also something new too. Not only do we want to think about our scale and numerically, like 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, but think about it in whole steps and half steps, because a lot of the way we're going to learn about chords and scales is the distance between each note. Now, when we're doing the major scale and the modes, each note is either a whole step apart or a half step apart. Whole step equals 2 frets on guitar. A half step equals 1 fret. So what we're going to do here, and if you look at the diagram, it says B Lydian. So now we're going to do a different Lydian mode, but it's still going to have that sharp 4. Okay. So look at right above the music notation. Between every pair of notes, I've got an H or a W written up top there. That's W's whole step, H is half step. Okay. So if you can do this with one finger too, people. Okay, 7th fret, and I'm going to play the open 2nd string so I hear the contrast against the root. We're playing in the B. So imagine that there's a band playing a B up to a C sharp over B. You know, another way to do that, everyone, is you could bar the 7th fret with your E form bar chord, and then bar the 6th fret, strings 4, 3, 2. That's your C sharp triad, and then hold the B note with your middle finger. Okay. Okay, that's your whole steps and half steps. So from the root, you go a whole step up, 2 frets. Okay, now go another whole step. Now go another whole step. This is the note that sounds a little different. Okay, then a half step. That's the sharp 4. Half step would be take you up to the 5th. Then another whole step is the 6th. Whole step is the 7. And then a half step is your root. And then back down. Try to be able to do it backwards. So from the root descending, you go a half step, whole, half. There's your sharp 4. Whole. And with that B note, okay, that way you can kind of play along with yourself without necessarily having a backing track, but try to come up with some nice little melodies. And that's what we're going to do on the bottom 2 examples on that page. Let me just catch the comments here real quick. Musically, I think I'm digging Lydian the least. Dave, all right, cool. And then Zach retracted his message. What other modes have 3 chromatic notes besides Lydian? I'm not sure what you're saying, Zach, because Lydian doesn't have 3. There's no chromatic notes. That's where you have like 3 or more in a row that are all half steps apart. The Lydian doesn't have that. Everything's a whole, and there's only 1 half step between sharp 4 and 5, and then a half step between 7 and 1. Okay, so let's try this like we did with our pentatonic scale. When you first learned your pentatonic scale, I'm sure your instructor had you do an exercise in sequences of 3s, or if you're a Guitar Tricks member, we got Christopher Schlegel's got a good little practice set of lessons, videos on doing your pentatonics in sequence of 3s, where we go up 3 notes from every note of the scale. Okay, we're going to do that with the Lydian. Okay, and it doesn't have to be complex. You could do it just with a couple fingers or even one finger. We're going to go up 3 consecutive notes. Then we're going to go back to the second note and go up 3. And this is all tabbed out, everybody. On the third example on this page, I've got triplets, them grouped in triplets. So the first 3 notes is the first triplet bracket, 7, 9, 11, with the open second string. The next set goes 9, 11, 13. Okay, see how that's tabbed out? So we're going 7, 9, 11, 9, 11, 13, then 11, 13, 14, 13, 14, 16, and then 14, 16, 18, and then I get the pinky up to the 19. Okay, so it goes. One more time. And then backwards, we're going to go 19, 18, 16. This is the bottom example on that page. Then we're going to go 18, 16, 14, 16, 14, 13, 14, 13, 11, 13, 11, 9, 9, 11, 11, 9, 7. Okay. Now there's a lick that I like to do when I'm playing on one string. Well, if I start on the high note, I'll start with my middle finger, and you just need 2 fingers for this, either 1 and 2 or 1 and 3. But I do 19, then I pick 18 with my index finger, hammer on to 19, pull off to 18. And then I slide down to the next note of the scale. This is a good way to get to know your scale and make it sound less like an exercise. Like that. Maybe throw in the second string. Okay, one more. How about, what would you do to make that lick go up? How about this? We'll start with 7 on the first string with your middle finger, and then we're going to hold the first finger on the 6th fret first string. Now, that's not in the tablature, but the 6th fret is the same as the 18th fret. I'm doing the same lick, but instead of sliding the index finger down to the next note, I'm sliding up to the note we just hammered on. And then I do it with the 9, 7. Okay, just to have a little lick that sounds kind of neat instead of just some boring exercise. Okay, but this sounds a little more happening. Now, over to the backing track, I know we're almost done, but if we're in E Lydian, I would need to do that against the E note. Or maybe on the second string. And I'll just do the same formula. If I start from the 5th fret, I need to follow the whole. It's 3 holes and a half, 2 holes and a half. So check this out. If I play just on the second string, that backing track, let's listen what this sounds like. Get it going here for a second. just explore it up and down, jump around, bounce around. Okay. So Russ, good. I'm glad you like that. Cool, cool. So we're going to wrap it up in a sec, everyone. Practice these, get them under your fingers. Next week, we're going to start the Lydian. And like I do with all of them, I'm going to give you some examples of guitar players or songs that use the Lydian. And then we're going to tackle it in the same manner with the cage pattern, 3 notes per strings. We're going to find out the good chord tones and then work from that. Okay. And if you're not getting all the theory, don't worry about it. Just absorb what you can. That's kind of how I do it. I just take in what I can. All right. So wrapping it up, everyone. Russ saying good ideas to spice up practice. Cool, cool. And Danny's saying really great lesson, Dave. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Thanks you, Danny. Appreciate everyone showing up. Thanks for your time dropping in here and checking us out. And if you're not a Guitar Tricks member, everyone, and you're looking to get some more things to work on and not just randomly cherry picking a bunch of things everywhere, because that's really not the best way to get good. We got systems and programs and courses and Guitar Tricks that will help you step by step notch up the ladder to becoming a better guitar player. Okay? Cool, King 50. Good deal. You're welcome. Second Chance Band, all right. You're very welcome, Marianne. Appreciate it. Hey, no problem, Marianne. Even if you can't make it, don't worry about it. I know you're good. And you probably don't need any of this stuff anyway. I know you got some good blues band you're doing and your own stuff too. Trish, you're very welcome. Head exploding yet again. Well, just absorb what you can. Not every Wednesday night class, well, granted the modes will be like this, but when I do some ones in the future after the modes, I'll try not to go so deep in the theory and just some more fun with this stuff. But it's good for us to get a little bit. Okay. Zane, yep. Appreciate it. Jim, awesome. All right. Well, everyone have a great night. Keep practicing. Peace. Keep those fingers flying. We'll see you next Wednesday night. Everyone be good. Take care. Bye.